Ha! You all thought I'd be doing something silly for April Fools this year, but surprise! It's the Akibaranger! If those Ranger keys start falling over in the middle of the review, I'm not fixing them.
Let's go! 輝くマシンライダージャーライダーキー仮面ライダー仮面ライダーライダーライダー
Yep, another Patreon request from Chandler Ritter, and it's a fun show. Really. While I've gotten the reputation as being a guy that's critical of comedy in what I review, note that I've only ever taken issues with comedy I've found bad. That's not the case here. No, Hikonin, Unofficial, sentai Akibaranger is the definition of a good parody, an intentional parody unlike how Carrangers come to be perceived, and thus even if you don't get or like the comedy within it, much of the defense for its flaws comes from that definition. It's a parody. So if you got issues with it, it's just meant to be a show that's not meant to be taken that seriously. That's not to say parodies can't be bad or insulting. I can name a hell of a lot of parodies that are awful due to outright offensive content, and are intentionally made to attempt to escape criticism because they call themselves a parody. Saturday Night Live I've never found funny, or the movies, and yet I find Robot Chicken and Monty Python hilarious. Comedy is going to be subjective after all, and a joke that might work for some is going to fall flat with others due to taste and experience. And most of the condemnation I've seen of this series has more to do with that, versus the structure it's presented in, which is normally where a comedy can be legitimately criticized. But to do a successful parody of Super Sentai, or anything really, you have to understand the material intimately, grasp the franchise's intents and history. You can't just shove someone into the generic superhero situation and then start making random quips about the scenario, when a serious situation is said to be going on around it, as it ultimately undermines such, but you need to have the right kind of situation to facilitate why that comedy, satire, and referential humor would work in and of the setting. And with an intimacy of the entire franchise that would be required for such a series to work, it's completely unsurprising that they tapped Naruhisa Arakawa for it, and he brought in Junko Komura, who we will discuss another day as she's better as a secondary writer as shown by Zyuohger and Lupin Ranger vs. Carranger, to collaborate. Here's the thing. Naruhisa Arakawa is the Toei writer given the least respect and acknowledgement out of all of Toei's long runners. Despite what he's done, long been considered a significant contributor to, or creator of, some of Toei's best or overall most popular tokusatsu work, and has a good head on his shoulders that permits those writers under him to then bring out their best. The dude has been around since Kamen Rider Black, and it took until Kuga to actually get a head writer gig, until Akibaranger to get another one, and has since only helmed Carranger, Gokaiger, and of course Akibaranger. As, unlike Kobayashi and Inoue where they can get quite unforgivably bad in their work, his series do not spark controversy and debate. He is instead the marathon man possessing consistent quality. If you want a quick cash grab series that won't care if the next show will take rebounding hits of negativity and end up doing the franchise damage long term, which you then scramble but fail to fix as you forgot what the problem was until she next shows up to do the same thing, you call Kobayashi. If you want an adult-themed series addressing adult problems that aren't things that can be solved neatly, but is cluttered with a schizophrenic focus, misunderstandings, complete and utter unforgivable assholes that can potentially destroy the other work it's trying to promote, and references to his dad's work, you call Inoue. But if you want a fun, intelligent, interesting series that ends up having long-lasting, long-loved appeal, you call Arakawa. As the dude is amazingly balanced. He can do comedy, he can do extreme serious situations, and unlike many Toei writers, can actually grasp how to characterize people and get them to properly play off of each other. Hell, he's even shown himself to be good about managing oddly sized casts, and has even taken input from them to improve the stories. and as showcased from Gokaiger, he could put a lot of character for a cast member into very little time. Hell, another thing he is consistently good at is taking older stories or the archetypes for them, and by putting different characters into their scenarios, make them feel as entirely new material, as the casts he writes are usually forerunners with their appeal, as they don't overtly mimic others, even if homages may exist in the material. A problem with a number of Sentai series is they can be the exact same to a T when they put repetitions of previous characters into the same scenarios we've seen before, with the only thing that makes them different being they did the story worse than their predecessor did, thus making it predictable and all the more frustrating when they overtly screw up or make unappealing something past shows succeeded with. With him, everything he writes always seems unique to the material around it due to the understanding he possesses in how to make an old story type not hit the exact same beats it did before, but varies them up so it feels new. It's baffling they haven't utilized him more, since he's very knowledgeable and works fully within the proper thematic of their franchises that Toei is so screwed up, and is one of Toei's few writers that actually writes excellent crossover events. Though, oddly, I'm glad they haven't used him more, as he has yet to make something outright bad that isn't being messed with by outside factors. His work consistently ends up fan favorites or the highlights of bad entries, the few in the detractors camp usually entirely missing their appeal or choosing to deride them to promote shows that, from an objective viewpoint, are garbage or hailed on doing new things, even when if you look around more, they're actually rip-offs of other series and didn't actually do anything of original merit in them. If you do the formula badly while staying slave to it, or it's only this story and these characters we've done before plus a gimmick that ultimately could have been excluded from the bigger story, it's going to be less appealing and have less staying power than one that builds itself around an idea and then explores it using previous patterns. Arakawa's work is consistently the latter, not the former, whereas post-Carranger Sentai has had the reverse happen with them. Though a big critique Akibaranger had against it was many saw it as being made to be an insult of many of the tropes from the Student Hero series with its satire, but this condemnation is mostly spouted by Power Rangers sect of the Tokusatsu fandom, and in reference to the Season 2 episode Delusional Imports, which is the episode addressing the whole Power Rangers is an adaptation of Super Sentai, and most of the world only sees the reverse thing. However, much of this show is taking all of this from a Sentai fan's perspective. So in context to the series and that episode was more about addressing how Power Rangers in modern days has evolved from being a proper adaptation or original show making use of another's material, and instead more and more has ended up being a rote bastardization and does wrongly by its source material. It was addressing how disrespectful Power Rangers has been in the Neo-Saban era. It's not saying that Power Rangers is an automatically inferior product or invalid, as many of the series in its original 17 years actively competed and at times outdid its Sentai counterparts. But at the time Akibaranger was airing, so were Samurai and Megaforce, which, as has been discussed at length by many people over the years, entirely screwed up in openly disrespectful ways. And that was what Akibaranger was actually calling out in its satire. I mean, Koichi Sakamoto guessed it in the episode. I doubt they were trying to intentionally be disrespectful to the good parts of Power Rangers with that. But regardless, that leads into what the series is and what its appeal is. Akibaranger digs deep into the Super Sentai formula and asks the question, what if a bunch of otaku dorks got Super Sentai powers, were led by a Super Sentai fanboy, and had to go through the Super Sentai formula? The answer is 2 13-episode seasons of zany fun. I wish I'd made popcorn for this.
Emergency! 燃えるハートでクールに走る。彼らの任務は地球に侵入した宇宙の犯罪者たちと戦い。
From second one, people.
何なんですかこれ。
スーパー戦隊シリーズ第28作目特捜戦隊デカレンジャーの SPD マークだ。
佐々木ポンポコデリバリー。
This is Nobuo Akagi, a Sentai otaku in the town of Akihabara, who's deluged in delusions of being part of his favorite series, which intrude on his day job and attempts at living his life.
シール未使用宿命と言われる ABS 樹脂の変色膜の値段は10万800円。 安い。高いが安い。
Ah, the pains of anyone trying to buy Toku memorabilia. I think I may have a problem. Unfortunately, he has multiple loves, like many fans. In Akagi's case being the magical moe gun anime girl Aoi-ten. Admit it, you all have at least one fictional character you'd entirely go gaga over like that.
And just so you know, I'm persistent and I never give up!
However, these fan interests and daydreaming delusions always intrude on his reality in an attempt to live a normal life. His embarrassment at them always stopping him from asking a woman he likes out, and even his attempts to be a good Samaritan are lost in his tendency to daydream away reality. However, his delusions are just what are needed by another person.
あなた、アキバレンジャーになって、人類の平和のために戦わない？
Akibaranger?
Well, not the worst candidate we've ever had. It's said we live in a timeline where a Sentai fanboy is more qualified to be a Red Ranger than 3 of the last 6 Reds. And I am counting both Powder Ranger and Lupin Ranger as separate teams on that count, so that's only referring to Tokuger onward series. Yes, Nobuo literally thinks in Super Sentai references. That is half the joke. The other half is him thinking he was scouted for an acting gig, alongside Aoyagi Mitsuki, who's going to be the Team Blue, and lastly scouting a Team Yellow, but since he notes the kana relation of how their names are spelled and sound, he's not seen one in his 29 years of life that relates to a yellow. 29? What a loser. Wait a second. I'm 29! Oh no! But the docs already recruited their last member, a cosplayer. A cat girl? Really? Really? Well, she was the best character in Mega Ranger, and I really liked Mega Ranger, so what the hell, I'll give you a pass. And yeah, Arakawa brought in the ultimate Sentai first, a 3-man team where it's 1 guy and 2 girls on it. Look at it this way, Nobo. Shacking up with 2 girls at the same time? An achievement few men ever gain. Doc takes them to her base, a Sentai-themed cafe. Are they operating out of Masaru Shishido's The Crystal Sky Bar? Where she properly introduces herself.
博士博士博士
なわけないでしょ。博士ひろよ。肩書きも博士じゃなくて店長。
I call her Doc. Aoyagi thinks this is all a farce as she's not into the Sentai stuff, but instead reveals herself as the team's battle freak. Doc taunting her own passion to keep her around long enough to explain what's going on, and give them their transformation trinkets. Which also reveals Aoyagi's inner fangirl, showing the 3 aren't so different after all. And with such, they're instantly immersed into a Sentai episode, surprising the lot of them. Hakase explains this isn't a TV show, and they aren't actually in reality, but a fantasy created from the powers of and defined by their imagination. And thus why I consistently say these guys are more imaginative than the Tokuger, who were powered solely by imagination.
37番目のスーパー戦隊として。
いや、それは無理。
活躍が認められて、テレビ化されて、日曜朝にオンエアされない限り、
Which sadly never happens as I take this show over Tokyo, Nin or Carranger.
スーパー戦隊シリーズの仲間には入れないのよ。つまり、あなたたちはまだ非公認戦隊。
And yet it didn't stop Naruhisa Arakawa from making it canon over Carranger. I'm not kidding on that.
あいつを俺の昔の仲間たちと組ませてみてください。
秋葉レンジャーだっけ？
ええ。
And Nobuo takes that to heart, deciding they'll protect the Earth in honor of becoming a true Super Sentai series. Doc warps them back to reality, but reveals she doesn't know who they're fighting, only that they're out there. While they're shocked, the chance to prove themselves encourages them to go out and scout for trouble, which Nobuo runs into. A cafe maid collapsing in the street as her shop has been taken over by maiden-made vampires. Also, goddamn that layered pun in the flyer advertisement. See, this is what I love about the Japanese language, which a number of liberal translators gut in their localization of the series. That is insanely clever. And the body count rises. However, who should be the blood and other liquid suckers than Mia and Nai from Carranger?
マジレンジャーで天空聖者や冥府神が独自に持っているとされていたのがまるでような世界。あの店、冥府神に見入られたに違いない。
See, this is why I get Narihisa Arakawa to write this. His intimate knowledge of Super Sentai makes this the god tier of referential narratives that things like Ready Player One could only dream of hoping to achieve. The more you know about Super Sentai, the more you are in on the joke, instead of the repetition being obnoxious as it can be with this kind of thing, or even more recent Sentai series that have tried the same type of homaging. But as Nobuo calls out their monsterness, the true antagonist reveals herself. This is Malshina, who's creating these monsters, but exploration of her is diverted. God, I'd like to explore her. I deserve that. As the Akibaranger transform, leading to the Sentai roll call, which is of course played for laughs as Nobuo's too into it, Aoyagi's oblivious of what to do, and Moegi gets repeatedly sidetracked.
I assume you're referring to the residual energy runoff that is sometimes necessary to clear the suit's biofield channels during the movement.
I'm referring to the 6-story high fireballs like that one, right there.
Malshina responds by revealing their organization is an evil corporate body. And what a butt! Okay, yeah, I should explain the in-joke instead of the in-joke here. Malshina's actress is Honoka, a former adult video idol, who in this role is using weaponized sex appeal to further her organization's goals of conquest, which is heavily dependent on the manipulation of nerds and the nerdy interests of Akihabara to build their power base. They could not have chosen a better actress. But she and her minions are intent on conquering the corporate world, one hostile takeover at a time. The pair call in their minions, but they just use their weapons to deal with them. Yep, if you use them early, it leads to getting curb stomped. See? However, with Malshina getting cold out in the Windy Mountains, she decides to head out. But by Sentai tropes that sadly have lost this point in recent years, as Nobuo additionally explains, she accidentally tripped the flag for her monster to lose, as this reality is defined by delusion, and delusions are defined by the rules of the storytelling tropes that creates it. And as this is a Sentai delusion, all of the Sentai tropes apply.
そうスペックだけで決まる勝ち負けなんてスーパー戦隊にはありえない
Especially in more recent series where the dumbasses should not be able to win at all and instead be getting themselves and others killed. However, as Nobuo expects a giant monster to appear, it's revealed that there's not one in their budget. The trio return to reality, the cafe restored to normal, and then being thanked for their work, and it then revealed by Doc that the entire battle, it all occurred in their heads. Hell yeah, it was! But really, that's Akibaranger in a nutshell. The entire story is layered puns poking fun at and calling up the stable gimmicks and storytelling tropes of Super Sentai in a fun but respectful way. In a lot of ways, it can be seen as the ultimate companion series to Gokaiger, and originally was intended to be too, as Gokaiger was doing much of the same in-universe, calling back respectfully to everything great Super Sentai had done by its cast meeting and being influenced by the heroes of old and the world they protected to make themselves into better people, and empowered by them as they earned that acknowledgement, while also ultimately finding and charting their own course as Super Sentai heroes. But that's different than doing it from a fan's perspective as Akibaranger does. A fan already knows all of these things, has understanding of what works and doesn't for the formula. Thus, their journey is one not of becoming a true hero, but seeking legitimate validation of their own journey and what defines them as a unique entity beyond the common tropes. While that is something all good Sentai series ultimately have to do at the end of the day to not be a bad show, Akibaranger makes this an overt theme by proxy of not being an official series, and it being a bunch of dorks play-acting against imaginary villains Doc accidentally brings into existence by even recruiting them, and then as the series goes on, and the delusions begin to intercede on reality, actually stand up to take on that challenge. By playing into these tropes, it manages to tell a fully original story without it plays with them, which is exactly Naruhisa Arakawa's wheelhouse, and something Sentai series since have constantly screwed up. Moreover, this series can also be seen as an examination of otaku culture, as many of its episodes play off of aspects of Japanese fandom and the effects those with passion of a subject put in, being Moegi's tendencies as a cosplayer,
私の猫耳が声変わった。
はいよ。
片付けない。
to Aoyagi's secret closet expressions of her fangirliness,
かわいい。これどこで買ったの？
ふにゃ。
そのキーホルダー。
お前3日前どこにいたって？
to the rather perverse side of how fans can be and calling them out for it.
これを貼ればただのイラストが一瞬で水玉コラにドリームチェンジ。
Yeah, I doubt you'd like that either. To Akagi seeing everything and how it relates to story points and tropes, which actually can be seen as positive to some, and how a well-told story can motivate someone to want to be a better person.
デカレンジャー4話で王子さんを目覚めさせた時と同じドロップキック。ありがとう。俺目が覚めたよ。
And hell, it even skewers some of the common tendencies, like the giant robot thing. And they have no idea how to pilot it either. Though, the CGI is surprisingly good for that kind of thing. Certainly better than Kyoryuger Brave even tried to half-ass. However, here's the problem with even talking about this series in the way I normally do, and you could probably guess what it is simply from me showcasing all of the best lines in just the first episode. If I were to do a full in-depth review of the show, I would spoil it and or explain each and every single joke in the series. And to quote Mark Hamill,
If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke!
And half of the show is legitimate humor about Super Sentai and the tropes of Super Sentai. Thus, the more you know about Super Sentai to see the cameos, homages, quips, and references, the more you'll either enjoy it or be annoyed by it. I'm firmly in the joint camp, as even when I was newer to the franchise and the full-on Japanese side of the Tokusatsu genre, I recognized enough recurring elements from Power Rangers adaptations to be able to more than follow along. That, and I marathoned 10 series in 3 years. Thus, to encourage anyone who might want to go out and see it, as this show I feel is certainly a must-see series for anyone that's been in the Sentai circles for even a few shows, I'm not going to get that into the series, as then I would be tempted to repeat each and every hilarious thing.
戦隊ヒーローを目指してる人がお酒なんか飲んでいいの？
バカなことを言うな。公認様にはブラックコンドル有機貝という渋くてかっこいい酒を愛する男がいるのだ。ここの酒はまずい。ビールの1杯や2杯何の問題もない。
冒険とレンジャーと冒険レンジャーじゃないの？冒険とジャーなの？ジャーって何？
レンジャーが定着するのは10レンジャー大レンジャーあたりからだが
大レンジャーって最初はレンジャーじゃなかったんだよね。その次の戦隊の企画は大賢者。
だから憲法の戦隊だったのか。
それこそ賢者ってなんだという話になり、大レンジャーになった。
これだからにわかは俺たちがハリケーンジャーでとっくに通り過ぎた道よね。
でも忍者がなんでハリケーンなんだろう。
ハリケンジャーの頃大流行した映画は
ハリーダーと賢者の略してハリケンジャー、一種の遊びだが賢者に市民権を与えやがて。
And then this review would take an entire month, as I would then need to go episode by episode. Though as I referenced Gokaiger and how it's taking Gokaiger's legacy theme and doing it from the otaku perspective, well, they even reference and make fun of Gokaiger.
今日はパワーレンジャー SPD のイベントで久しぶりにこの格好してるけど。
Cameos, bitches! Actually, context to that scene, Toei dubbed in Japanese Power Rangers SPD and ran it on television in 2011 to 2012, with the Carranger cast returning to voice their American counterparts. It actually did very well for itself, for its time slot. And not only that, encountering Super Sentai actors in real life leads to them creating imaginary versions of the Super Sentai heroes, which they then transform into ludicrous powers, the actual Gokaiger parody bit of the series, which gives them a small collection of special armaments. However, not everything is up and up for this team. In episode 2, Doc showcases that their delusion powers makes it so that all of their battles, yeah, they're all in their heads, and defined by the power of solely their imagination. And thus why they're more imaginative than Tokuger. But this devastates Akagi as he thought he was getting his chance to be a real hero, only to see everything he thought they were achieving was actually dealt with by the cops, and there was no real enemy to fight, or at least so they think, as Malshina and her minions keep appearing all over Akihabara to attack the district in what makes it unique. See, Akihabara is a shopping district that over the years has become the center of all types of fandom expression and caters itself to appeal to otaku with its variety of specialized collector stores, maid cafes, doujin emporiums, and basically makes its money from exploiting the disposable income of nerds, which Malshina and her group want to turn to evil. She ships it. Because damn it, everything is gay about this. I hate that that is becoming my catchphrase. Thus, over the series, in their quest to become recognized as official Sentai, their journey makes them the protectors of fandom and its integrity in all of its forms. Nobuo as the typical dorky guy with just a passion and enjoyment of something, Moegi one who hides herself under the guise of her cosplay as she prefers to be someone else to help her cope, and Aoyagi as someone that's a new entrant into something, and being encouraged by its veterans. While she also works to drag them more back into reality and confronting the problems they escape and how they express themselves, well, just might not be the most healthy. In a way, it actually does help both Moegi and Nobuo, by giving them the chance to socialize in a natural way, instead of fantasies being their sole outlet for their lives' frustrations or failings. Especially with how their enemies are in part delusions, and can ultimately manipulate the delusions to their own ends. To be honest, from the outset of the series, I'll admit to openly shipping Nobuo and Moegi, because I am a shipper. Their shared interests, their shared dorkiness, their open acceptance of each other, it's a match made in heaven only prevented with how Nobuo is crushing on an office worker named Sayaka, he regularly interacts with, but is afraid to approach due to his nerd interests, and Moegi, well, prefers to pretend she's far younger than she is through her cosplay, thus making herself unavailable for a relationship. The reason for Moegi's reluctance to grow up and is such a heavy cosplay otaku, however, is explored in episode 5, which also pokes fun at the visiting family story types. When her mother visits, her mother being played by Rika Matsumoto, who is a founding member of Jam Project, the Japanese voice actor for Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, I am not kidding on that, singer for Ryuki's opening Alive Alive, and has voiced Sentai monsters for literal decades, so even their guest actors are multiple tiers of meta. And the two share a passion for cosplay, or at least it seems, as her mother is actually dead, and has been since she was 19, thus explaining why she acts so much like a kid, since the age of actual adult maturity in Japan is when you turn 20. Her retaining her childishness is Moegi's way of keeping her mother alive. Though, from how everything in the episode is presented, you would never know that until the end. Moegi's cosplaying, then, is a way of keeping a loved one alive through something they passionately shared, even if it's keeping her from being able to move on and become the adult she's supposed to be.